Hey, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about a massive shift happening to the internet. Like, right now. It's a story about who the web is really for, a pretty famous founder making a big comeback, and a huge bet on what comes next. All right, let's get into it.
So let me just start with this question. What if the internet was built for the wrong user? I mean, think about it. For 3 decades, every single button, every search bar, every little design choice has been made with one very specific user in mind.
And that user was you. It was me. It was us. But here's the twist. The future of the entire web now depends on how it adapts to its second user. And that second user? It's AI. And that's the fundamental conflict we're digging into today.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about this second user. To really get what a company like Parallel is trying to do, you first have to understand this massive, kind of critical mismatch that's sitting right at the heart of the internet as we know it.
You see, the web is built for us humans, right? We need stuff to load in like less than a second. We type in vague, messy keywords. But AI agents, they are the total opposite. They can be patient. They can wait minutes even for a really deep answer. They can chew through thousands of documents at once, and they work with precise, logical goals. The current web it wasn't designed for that at all.
And this mismatch, it creates something you could call a computational bandwidth crisis. Now, the problem isn't your internet speed. It's not about the network. It's about the insane amount of computing power that gets wasted when an AI has to basically pretend to be a human, scraping messy websites and making thousands of requests just to do one complex thing. It's just wildly inefficient.
So, who's going to solve a problem this big, this fundamental? Well, that brings us to the main character in our story. A pretty familiar face, especially if you followed the social media world. But he's on a very, very different mission now.
Yeah, so after that, let's call it a tumultuous run as Twitter's CEO, Parag Agrawal didn't just disappear. He actually went right back to his roots, back to writing code. And it was there, while he was tinkering with AI agents, that he really saw this core problem firsthand. And that led him to quietly start Parallel back in 2023.
You know, for Agrawal, this isn't some random new project. He sees it as a continuation of his old mission. It's still all about how do you keep the web open? But this time, the threat isn't what you might think, like censorship. The threat is the web's own architecture, which is starting to give websites every reason to just close themselves off to AI.
And look, this is not just some side project he's hacking on. Some of the biggest and smartest names in venture capital are betting that he's onto something huge. Parallel has already pulled in $30 million in funding to go after this problem. That tells you just how big of a deal re-architecting the web could actually be.
All right, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. We've talked about the problem, we've talked about the founder, so what is Parallel actually building? Okay, so at its core, Parallel is basically a whole new layer of infrastructure for the internet. Think of it as a platform built from the ground up, not for human eyes, but for machines to use. It gives AI agents a whole suite of tools, APIs, and these things they call research engines, that let them access and understand the web in a way that's finally efficient and reliable.
So a key part of this is something they call deep research. And here's how it works. Instead of giving an AI a bunch of steps, you just tell it the final goal. Go find this. And here's the truly wild part. Parallel's engine can take up to 30 minutes, 30 minutes, to just grind away, exhaustively searching and synthesizing thousands of sources. And what it spits out at the end is a super structured, verifiable answer that goes way, way beyond what you get from a normal search.
And it's not just one tool. They built out a whole suite to handle different AI needs. You've got the really slow but incredibly powerful Ultra 8X engine for those super deep dives we just talked about. But then you also have faster APIs that are optimized for, quick conversational stuff. It's the whole spectrum, really, a full toolkit for the machine user. So what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, imagine an AI agent working for an insurance company. You could tell it, find every possible long-tail risk signal for this new client. It could then spend hours, or however long it takes, doing the work of an underwriter, but on a scale that's just inhuman. It could totally change how a job like that is done.
But this brings us to the even bigger vision. Because this isn't just about the tech, it's about building a whole new economic engine for the internet. You could almost think of it as an AdSense, but for AI.
Agrawal calls this an existential risk for the web. And it makes sense, right? Right now, the web runs on ads. But AI agents, they don't see ads. They don't click on them. So as AI traffic explodes and starts to dominate, what's stopping every publisher from just blocking AIs completely? or throwing all their content behind a hard paywall. You'd end up with a broken, fragmented, closed-off web.
So, Parallel's big idea is a totally new economic model. First, you charge different prices for access depending on who's asking. A human just browsing is different from a hedge fund's AI doing deep research. Then, you use technology to track exactly where the information came from, so you can share the revenue fairly. And the end goal? Create a system where publishers actually make more money by keeping their content open to AIs instead of blocking them.
It really is like an AdSense for the new AI-driven web. Just like AdSense gave publishers a way to make money from human clicks, Parallel wants to build the underlying system that lets them monetize machine traffic. It gives everyone a real incentive to keep the web open.
And this all brings us to the final, really big picture here, because what Parallel is doing, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's one possible answer in a much larger debate about what the internet is even supposed to be in its next chapter. You could really call it a battle for the internet's soul.
And it really all comes down to this one question. As machines become the main users of the web, who gets to decide how it all works? Who's in control of that fundamental architecture?
Because there are really three competing visions for what comes next. You have Parallel, which is betting on what you could call pragmatic centralization, optimizing for pure performance and speed. That's in sharp contrast to the web's original inventor, Tim Berners-Lee, who's all about user control and privacy. And then you have the whole Web3 and decentralized AI movement, which champions radical openness and censorship resistance above everything else.
But this right here, this is Parag Agrawal's called shot. It's a massively bold prediction. He's saying that in 10 years, his company's pragmatic, performance-first approach won't just be the winner. It'll be the very thing that keeps the web open and competitive for its new AI user base.
And that leaves us with one final thought. It really feels like the future of the web is a kind of trilemma, a choice between performance, privacy, or protocol. You might not be able to have it all. Parallel has clearly made its bet. So the question for all of us is, which of these will we and the market ultimately value the most? Thanks for watching The Explainer.